everyone, this is Melissa, artist in resident at Imagine, and today I'm sharing with you how I made a mixed media tag with a number of Imagine products. I start with white gesso, and you can use white acrylic watered down as well, and I'm just brushing that onto the front and also the sides of the tag for a nice finish. Next, I'll be taking some Versa-Magic chalk ink in turquoise gem and a sponge dauber and really rubbing that all over. I've found that Versa-Magic works well over gesso, and if you add a few coats, you get a nice dark color. Now, between coats, I do use my heat tool, but I will tell you that gesso will bubble, so you want to use your heat tool in a very light-handed fashion and kind of go over and make sure that it's cool and not too hot as that Versa-Magic dries. And you really do want to make sure that the Versa-Magic is completely dry before you add your next layer of color. And so I'm going to be using the stencil that you see next to me there from Altenew, and that stencil is called Leaf Burst Stencil. And I simply add it to my tag, and then I always like to add a little bit of post-it tape just to make sure that that stencil is not going to move. And I'm going to be taking Sunflower Yellow with a different large sponge dauber and daubing on that color all over that whole side of that stencil that you see. Once the Versa-Magic, the turquoise gem that I laid down first, is completely dry, you can layer these inks and maintain the color. Now, the first layer of the Sunflower Yellow doesn't give me the bold color that I want. You can see it does a nice job covering, but I think that I'd like to add another layer. So I'll touch it with my heat tool again, making sure that I don't get it too hot, and then laying that stencil right back over the tag and going in with a little bit more of that brilliant Sunflower Yellow. In order to keep the integrity of that yellow color, I want to go over the whole kind of sunflower yellow with a creative medium. This creative medium has a shimmer to it, and this is also from Imagine. So I take a palette knife, and you don't need a lot of creative medium, and I will tell you that I made a bit of a mistake as I did this, and that was not allowing that second coat of Versa-Magic ink to dry completely, and you'll see what that effect has on this creative medium because I didn't let it dry completely. You can see that as I scrape off that creative medium, there's some yellow to it, so I didn't want to put that back in my container. So keep that in mind. If you do use creative medium and you do get some color bleeding into it, you don't want to scrape that back into the creative medium. So now I'm taking a watercolor brush and adding some water to this tag, and then taking my Danube Blue firework sprays and smushing some color into that water that I've added. The spray will only go where the water is, and you'll see that I can kind of keep it contained on that side of the tag. However, I do decide that I want more of the Danube Blue. Adding water to it really, made the color a lot lighter. So I go in with a dropper, and I add some more directly to the tag. And then you can see me moving that color around ever so gently so that it stays, for the most part, within that water boundary that I've made. And then I will go ahead and start drying that a little bit with my heat tool. And again, I don't want to bubble that creative medium or the gesso that's underneath. I decide as I'm drying this, I want a little bit softer edge, so I take my wet paintbrush and just kind of go along that hard edge that I have from the fireworks spray and dab it, and you can see that takes care of that. It's very easy to manipulate the fireworks once it's on top of the gesso and Versa-Magic. So now I went in with a paper towel and kind of cleared up some of those hard edges of that fireworks spray, and in hindsight I wish I had left it because I think that actually gave kind of a nice definition to some of those leaves there, but I had already used the paper towel to dab it off, and I decided, that's okay, I'm going to add enough to this tag that it probably shouldn't matter too much whether you can see those dark areas around the leaf. So I decide that, I like this, but I want to add some more of that Danube Blue because I think the blue against the turquoise gem is beautiful. So I splatter some of that directly from the pump of the fireworks spray, and then I'm going to go ahead and dry that up just a little bit And again, always remember your gesso could bubble and so can your creative medium, so just do this lightly. And then I decided I want a little bit of white on this tag too, just to stand out. And I'm taking some gesso, and just remember that gesso is a white watered down acrylic paint. So if you have white acrylic, you can use that as well. I'm putting it onto a stamping block, adding some water so that there's still a little bit of thickness to this, but it's easy to flick my paintbrush to get this nice splatter pattern on my tag. Now from there, I'm going to be taking these adorable little chipboard sentiments from Make It Crafty, and I'm going to add a little bit of that sunflower yellow Brilliance ink, because I feel like after adding all the different colors to the tag, I've kind of washed out that yellow a little bit, and I like the yellow against the turquoise gem. So I'm taking some masking tape and sticking it on my hand repeatedly so it's not so sticky, so it won't rip the chipboard, and then adding it to the back and then simply smushing it down into the Brilliance ink as you've seen me do before. And then I'm taking the background part of the chipboard and spraying that with the Danube Blue, and it's beautiful and sparkly, and it gives a nice bold outline to those letters so that you can see them once they're on the tag. Now I do decide I want that yellow to stand out a bit more, so I'm going over with the stencil again with that Brilliance yellow to add a little bit more color. And to be safe, I should have added more creative medium over the top of that, but I decided not to, and it actually dried okay and it didn't smear off. In the future though, I would probably add just a little bit more creative medium to make sure that that wouldn't happen. And now I'll be taking the chipboard letters off of the tape and drying them up just a little bit more. I did give them a little bit of time to dry. And I'll be using my On Point glue. I love this glue. It comes with a nice fine tip, and it also comes with a wire plug so that it doesn't ever clog, which I find happens with a lot of other glues that I've tried using in the past, and it is very adhesive as well. So once I get some On Point glue all over the back of that, I will adhere it to the background that I sprayed with the Danube Blue, and then I put an acrylic block on top of that to dry. So I've started putting the tag together a little bit, and I thought, how am I going to get these butterflies to adhere to this tag because they have this large point? I found that the dimensional glue dots work really well, and so I shove the tip of that butterfly into that and then stick it to the tag, and it works great. The other thing I wanted to try is using On Point glue with this jute string, and I wasn't entirely sure if this would work or not, but it actually worked fairly well. So I used the On Point glue, smushed that down in there, and then laid another acrylic block on there. Now I'm taking Firework Spray and Dandelion with some seam binding, and I'm spraying the seam binding. I love Firework Spray. You can use it for so many different things, and in this time I'm using it to color the seam binding so I can add that to the top of my ribbon. It's a little bit messy, so wear gloves if you don't want it on your fingers. I'll allow that to dry, and as that's drying, I'm going to go ahead and add the Happy Birthday to the tag, again with the On Point glue, because it adheres to the cardboard so well. And then I'll be adding another butterfly with that dimensional dot. This time I'm going to make sure that that string stays put by attaching it over top of the string and then adhering that butterfly. The end becomes very fast here, and I apologize for that, but adding the embellishments are something that most of you have already done, and you don't need a lot of instruction there. So I'm also adding some glittery gems that I've gotten from Whimsy Stamps. They're a beautiful blue that matches that Danube Blue Firework Spray. And then I will be adding all of the different ribbons that I have, including the Dandelion seam binding that you saw me make. And I simply loop it, and in the middle of the ribbon, I shove that through the hole on the tag and then bring the rest of the ribbon from the back through the loop so that you have a completed tag. I hope you enjoyed today's tutorial on how to make this mixed media tag, and you'll join us again at Imagine for more wonderful projects from our artist in residence. Please make sure to look at the description box below as well, where you can find links to all of the Imagine and Tsukaneko products that I used in today's video.